Hello and welcome to part 3 of your complete guide to the 11 plus. This video is going to be really short but really important, okay? And it's all the juicy nitty-gritties on how you can help your child at home. So I'm going to share all the resources that we use as professional teachers and all my recommendations that I've selected through trial and error through many years of teaching children how to pass the 11 plus, okay? So let's just pop me down to a slightly smaller bubble and over here. Now, the first thing when you're doing this at home is to understand why you have to do all of this extra work. Now, the last couple of videos have touched on this, but the most important thing that you have to understand is that children will not learn everything that they need to learn for the 11 plus exam when they're studying at school. Simply because of that time frame. You've got the exams which are taking place at the beginning of year 6, and they are assessing children in everything that they will learn in year 6. So they haven't done the learning yet. Okay, so you can't assume that school's going to do it, however brilliant their teacher is and however bright your child is. The next thing is to seek professional advice. Don't just rely on Facebook. Look up professional websites. Now, the ones I tend to go to for lots of information, there's not just, there's lots of free information available on these websites. So Exam Papers Plus and Atom Learning, particularly Atom Learning. These are websites which are tailored specifically for 11 plus exams to both grammar and independent schools. So if maybe you want your child to go to one of the Kent schools. So let's just choose Kent, for example. You would look up that school on Atom Learning and it'll tell you all the details about the Kent test, the type of exam that your child will be doing, what they'll be tested on, when the exams are, what the sort of usual pass mark. And as I said in my last video, we don't have a pass mark, but the usual sort of level that your child will have to be at in order to secure a place. So those are my two top websites that I use for any information. Okay, Atom Learning also has an online platform that I work with as well. So if you'd like a discount code for either of these, just let me know and I can tell you a little bit more about them. Just send me an email. The next thing then is to think about planning and timing. So I've said that we've got to cover all of the year 5 and 6 curriculum before the end of year 5. So you've got to plan ahead and start early. Now, the best time to start is, in my opinion, the beginning of year 4. Okay, a lot of parents ask me about, what about year 2 and 3 children? It's important for those children to love learning, and it's important for them to enjoy what they do, learn through playing, learn through games, but also to excel in their curriculum at school. So focus on the mental maths and the reading and writing and things like that at year 2 and 3. By the time they come into year 4, you can start accelerating them through that curriculum. So they've basically got 2 years in which to learn 3 years of curriculum, rather than starting at the beginning of year 5, which is also very possible, and we do start children at the beginning of year 5, but then you've only got about 8 months or 9 months to complete the whole of the year 5 and the year 6 curriculum. So it's just a little bit of a sort of it's a steeper journey, steeper learning curve, if you like. I often use the analogy of a mountain. We're trying to get to the top of the mountain. Okay, if you start in year 4, then you've got a very gradual climb up that mountain. We still get to the summit at the right time, but if you start in year 5, it's a much steeper climb up the mountain. All right, so I would recommend starting in year 4, but starting at the beginning of year 5 is also okay, particularly if your child is bright and able. Again, a lot of sort of caveats on this, depends on the child a lot. Any later than the beginning of year 5, and again, not impossible, depending on the child, and so I can guide you through that. But if you're starting later than the beginning of year 5, there's a lot of work to do. Okay, know your board. Now, the exam board that your child is taking becomes relevant really towards the end of their studies, because all of these boards that they use across the country. So GL is the most common one for the grammar schools. There's also this CSSE, which is an Essex consortium. Future Schools is one that they use in a few schools like Reading Boys, and some of the ones around Chelmsford also use that. They do differ slightly, like these two have a creative writing element, this one doesn't. CEM and ISEB are usually computer-based tests, the ISEB one being specifically for independent schools, the ISEB pre-test. But you have to know which one you're preparing for, But as I said, you probably niche down into the particular board closer to exam time, because the curriculum that your child needs to know for maths, English, verbal and non-verbal reasoning will be the same no matter which board they're doing. So it doesn't really matter which books and things you get to start with. It's only at the end, when you're doing exam practice, that you need to practice the style in which your child will be taking their own exam. And then once you know all of that, get a curriculum, a detailed curriculum. I've got curriculum. I can send you the curriculums that we've written out based on what we know is in the exams, because there's no sort of go-to 11 plus sort of official curriculum, but we can tell you exactly what's going to be in those exams, and you have to plan. Okay, so a lot of parents say, oh, we're working through the CGP books. That's great. Now, the CGP books are some of the ones that I use. I think they're some of the best books out there. But just working through is not a plan, because you don't know exactly what your child has to learn. You don't know what order they have to learn it in. For example, you can't teach adding and subtracting fractions until you've done equivalent fractions and improper fractions, etc. So you need to be able to plan like a teacher would do, and work out that, right, we're starting at this point and we've got to get to this point. So we've got X number of weeks and we've got this much curriculum to cover. So what do I need to do each week so that I can tick off all of these curriculum and skills, all this subject knowledge that we need to impart and teach our children between now and exam day. Okay, so it's a really important exercise to sit down and do, just like teachers do. We sit with a plan, we go ahead, we know exactly what we're teaching each week, so we know we'll finish on time. Okay, so then you need to plan ahead. Once you've worked out what you need to do, you need to, as I said in my last video, get your child on board, they know what they're doing, and then plan ahead. So children thrive with a routine. We know that as parents, but also as teachers. If we do something wacky in the middle of a school day, like we don't have double maths this morning. This morning we're going to go to the forest to do some insect analysis or something. And the children are just, whoa, like they don't know what's going on because it's a change of plan. If you plan ahead and you actually say, right, okay, on a Sunday night, perhaps you sit down and say, right, we've got gymnastics on Monday. Tuesday, we've got a maths lesson. After the maths lesson, we're going to do our maths homework. On a Wednesday, we're going to do our English homework from last week. And then on Thursday, we're going to do some verbal or non-verbal reasoning. So you've got that time booked in, right? 11 plus study does have to be booked into your child's diary. It's as important as a piano lesson or a football practice. Plan ahead for it. Don't just get back from school and go, oh, I think actually we ought to do a little bit of VR now. Let's sit down and do 5 minutes of VR. That's a very haphazard slapdash way of approaching your planning and your work. And make sure that your child is on board. Again, I talk about this a lot, but honestly, the way you talk to them about it, the way if they're part of the planning process, it will not be a surprise to them and they will feel involved and empowered by this. And then this is sort of a repeat of what we said before, but ensure you have time to cover all the skills and topics before June, because in June of year 5, you want to have completed the curriculum so that you can spend July and August doing exam prep, preferably June. I mean, in our courses, we aim to finish at the beginning, well, about the middle to end of May, and then we do June, July, and August is all revision and exam practice, because it's all very well knowing all of these skills and having all of these skills, but can we apply them to exams and then at speed, under pressure, and achieve that sort of 90% mark? That's what we're looking for. Okay, so I told you it was going to be a quick video. Tomorrow's video is super important. You're going to learn the 3 key things that you must include in your teaching when you're supporting your child at home. They're the 3 things that we include as teachers. And as I said, just working through a workbook is not enough. Without these 3 things, your child simply will not reach their full potential. So join me tomorrow in the next email, and I'll tell you what those 3 things are from experienced teachers. Okay, thanks so much for being here, and any questions, pop me an email. I'll see you tomorrow.